Hello and welcome to the Aviation Barbecue for what unfortunately has to remain some more socially distanced aviation chat. The eagle-eyed amongst you have noticed that the barbecue element has been a bit lacking in recent episodes, so I'm pleased to say barbecue is back on this evening. I'd hoped to be getting back out to meet people to chat and to cook, however we are of course still in the midst of COVID, so I'm afraid any travel is still on hold. Luckily, it doesn't stop us from chatting through the power of Zoom, and this latest episode is set to be an absolute cracker. Lt Col Jan Stahl has been a US Air Force aggressor pilot for over a decade. He initially flew the F-15C with the 65th Aggressor Squadron, and he's now flying the F-16 with the 64th Aggressor Squadron as a US Air Force reservist. Are you ready to roll?
Ready.
Cuts, good morning. Great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's night time here, and I know it's in the morning there in Las Vegas. So, tell us where you are and how you are.
Thanks for the invite. Doing fantastic. I'm here at the world famous Red Eagle Bar, formerly of the 65th Aggressors, and soon enough to be from the 65th Aggressors again. They are scheduled to move back into this building and into this bar here within the month. So I am just dodging COVID like everybody else, and getting ready for another red flag that is going to kick off here in 3 weeks.
So you've been an aggressor pilot with the US Air Force for about 10 years now, I guess it must be that. Can you just explain, kind of in layman's terms, what's the aggressor mission all about?
To really break the aggressor mission down, you do have to kind of take a trip back in history, if you will, particularly in the late 60s, where the U.S. Air Force was taking stock of its performance, specifically in the air arena in the Vietnam War, and taking stock as to why our kill ratios had declined so precipitously over what they were in World War II. And most importantly, why there was such a big disparity in air performance between the Air Force and the Navy. Where, of course, a very well-known report called the Red Baron Report was spun up. That's brought along with it several conclusions, the main one of it being that the Air Force was missing dissimilar air combat in order to get its pilots more proficient. In other words, where instead of going out with your own squadron mates every day and just flying against similar aircraft using similar tactics with similar performance, what we really needed was a dissimilar air combat training program of some sort, where you would go up against a sparring partner that would increase that level of proficiency in air warfighting, if you will. That takeaway in the Red Baron report led to the U.S. Air Force taking several different actions. One of them being to spin up the aggressor program with the intent of establishing a core of professionals whose only job would be to present as realistic as an adversary as humanly possible to the combat squadrons, and again present that challenging sparring partner that would let them see something different than just their own mates in their own aircraft every day.
Okay, and you've been an aggressor pilot for 10 years, as I said, in the one of the world's most famous air bases at Nellis. I mean, it's just an incredible place. How's it been for you flying this mission at Nellis for a decade?
Having been here for a decade is definitely not common. We do have a cadre of reservists out here at Nellis that has built up this experience and the continuity and help out our active duty partners that cycle in probably every 2.5 to 3 years or so. So I am one of, I would venture a guess, maybe 7 or 8 reservist aggressors that maybe have been here for a little bit longer. But even among the reservists, I think I am probably one of those that's a little crustier and older than most. That said, Nellis is a place to fly that is second to none. The ability you have here to be at the very tip of the spear in terms of tactics development, in terms of the spin up and initial operational capability for new platforms. I've been here for the operational test for both the F-22 and the F-35 as they came online and was a part of that. So the ability to be a part of these projects and the ability to be a part of these absolutely mind-boggling, extremely realistic exercises like Red Flag, that is something that I think can only be done here. And having been able to do that for now close to 10 years has been an incredible challenge, but it's been an insane amount of fun as well. I've really enjoyed it.
I mean, it really is the nerve centre of all the latest and greatest with the US Air Force, isn't it? I mean, it's just, what a place. Of all the places you could be to get a long tour, Nellis, tick. So you started out flying the F-15 with the 65th Aggressor Squadron in terms of your aggressor career, and now you're flying the F-16. So how did the Eagle compare with flying the F-16 in the aggressor role? Before you start answering, I'm going to stick another log on the fire because unlike Vegas, it's very chilly here.
The most important thing to remember is that at the aggressors, we don't use the airframes as you would think from their capabilities in the combat air forces, how we use them in a blue role. The first thing that the aggressors will do when they get their hands on a new airframe is to figure out how we can use the capabilities that that particular airframe brings in order to replicate very specific adversary capabilities, right? So when we initially spun up the 65th Aggressor Squadron, part of our daily job consisted of comparing, let's say, the radar performance in the Eagle and figuring out how it mirrored very particular radar capabilities in, let's say, the C-27 flanker or other airframes, or how we could tweak what radar modes and with what exact parameters we could actually take those Eagles airborne in order to present an as realistic simulation of a particular system that we could possibly have for a particular mission or for a particular exercise. Okay. So the switch from the F-15 to the F-16 for me hasn't been so much about just learning to employ a new jet in terms of becoming proficient in it, as much as it was trying to make my brain switch modes into figuring out how some of these threat capabilities are best simulated in a completely different piece of hardware. So it's been an interesting learning process, and although I've been flying the F-16 for close to 5 years now, I think I still have a lot to learn.
Do you really? Are there any things that you would do now in an F-16 or an aggressor pilot would do in an F-16 in terms of the way you fly it, physically flying the jet, that a regular kind of squadron guy wouldn't do? Do you do different things? Do you pull G in a different way? Do you perform it? Do you use the performance in a different way?
So the way that we will utilize the jet and its capabilities on a beyond visual range type of engagement is different than how we would employ it in like a within visual range, quote unquote, dogfight type of engagement. The mindset that we employ here at the aggressors is beyond visual range. We're looking to simulate threat capabilities, threat avionics, threat signatures to the best extent that we possibly can. But once we actually make our way to the merge, we have to take into account that there's really no good way to simulate how a flanker would turn, how a fulcrum would turn, how a Su-57 would turn. So I think what we then the mindset we switch to once we actually get to a visual engagement is we'll just give the absolute hardest tactical problem to the pilot that we're flying against that we possibly can in order to get the biggest training value out of it. So less a matter of how we're going to turn the jet. The more challenging part in a visual engagement is the fact that we're going to continue to employ threat weapons, right? So instead of taking the weapons that I have loaded in my jet, my AIM-9s, my AIM-120s, and so on and so forth, I'm still simulating, enemy short-range missiles and their weapons employment zones as realistically as I possibly can. So that, I think, is the biggest challenge in the aggressor world is pulling G's, is maneuvering in the visual arena to fly the best BFM, the best fighter maneuvers you possibly can, while still keeping that threat simulation as tight as you possibly can.
And those short range missiles you're talking about now, is that, I remember flying with T-38s at Langley, and they had some chalk pencil on the canopy for weapons engagement zone WESs. Is that stuff all in your head in a Viper? Do you do any things like that? Are there any real basic things you can do like that?
100%. There are some basic things you can do like that. I certainly have flown with grease pencil markings on my canopy to remind me specific of the angles that I'm looking for, and especially if they're different from what I'm used to employing the F-16 in a quote unquote blue roll. Yeah, right. Yeah. The beauty of performing these kind of simulations with the hardware we have available here at Nellis, though, is that we can go to a significantly higher degree of fidelity and a significantly higher degree of technical sophistication. So the bread and butter of what we execute every day, for instance, is simulating enemy helmet-mounted sight capabilities with our JHMX helmets and tweaking the angles and the ranges at which we would employ those weapons, though, in order to simulate those threat enemy capabilities. So the grease pencil markings are the very basic version. We do the PhD version of that with the systems we have available to us here.
It's interesting, actually. We've never discussed this before. I mean, you and I have spoken many times, but in terms of, it sounds like you're taking what you've got, you're looking at what you want to achieve, and then you're kind of setting the parameters of what you've got to achieve that. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, 100%. The translation of what we can do on a technological level into what we would like to simulate with what we know what the threat is doing, I think is our bread and butter, and it's probably what we're most proud of, what we do here as aggressors. What I can tell you also is that, again, based on what we see on open source and based on what we see with talking to our coalition partners and some of the foreign visits that we make, is that exact capability, Jamie, this translation of how to best simulate a threat capability with blue hardware is something very unique to us. It's something the aggressors do extraordinarily well, and it's something that other countries are very interested in. When I was here in 2013, I believe, potentially 2014, the then chief of staff of the Russian Federation Air Force happened to come through Nellis.
Oh, wow.
Colonel General Zelen, and he had the standard dog and pony show tour set up to where he would go see the weapon school, go see the Thunderbirds, go see some of these other missions that we have here at Nellis. And the urban legend says he told the people that were accompanying him through Nellis, "No, I don't care about any of that. Show me the aggressors. I want to see the aggressors." So if that doesn't tell you how important our job is and what we do and how unique that role is and how far away other countries' air forces are from having this capability, I think that story illustrates it particularly well.
Later this year, some F-35s are going to start joining the aggressor role, some early build examples of the F-35. How's that going to change the aggressors? I mean, what's it going to bring to the aggressor role, and who's going to get the chance to actually get involved in that stuff and actually bring these online and develop the F-35 as an aggressor?
So I would say the reason why that next step in our capability is exciting is because it's yet another chapter of the story of the aggressors working very closely with the combat air forces in order to figure out ways that we can best challenge some of the blue capabilities that we have. For instance, I remember back in my early years in the aggressors, when we were first doing the operational tests of the F-22, I remember spending weeks in the vault with some of the new F-22 pilots, where we were putting our heads together and figuring out what are some of the ways that we can best challenge how the F-22 employs tactically, based on how their radar works, based on how their display symbology works, based on how their tactics work, you know, based on how they would employ in war, based on how they would execute their tactics. What are some of the ways we can challenge that to the best extent we can? And we came up with some threat tactics that we've never seen an enemy nation do before, but that we thought we could execute here at Nellis in order to make aerial combat as complicated for the F-22 specifically as we can. And we were hugely successful. I mean, if I could take you back into the vault, I could tell you about some specific tactics that we developed that F-22 pilots hate because it makes it so complicated for them to shoot us. Oh, really? Bringing the F-35 online is going to be another step in that direction. In other words, we are going to put the great minds of blue and red together and get as much F-35 expertise and bring it to bear in this exact same discussion. In other words, based on how the F-35 employs and based on what its strengths and weaknesses are, how can we best challenge them? How can we provide that best sparring partner to them in order to improve their proficiency, in order to mitigate their weaknesses, and in order to effectively make use of their strengths? So that's going to be exciting. The flip side to that, or the addition to that, is the fact that as threat countries develop fifth generation fighter capabilities, we as aggressors need to stay on step with that technological development and be able to replicate some of these capabilities as well. So the F-35s coming online here at the aggressors are certainly going to allow us to do that as well. But ultimately, what it's all going to boil down to is what I was talking about, that bringing together of blue and red expertise in order to make as good use of this new asset as we possibly can.
Okay, who's going to get to fly some of the? Is it going to be from the current cadre guys, or is it going to be new guys coming in?
me. So it's going to be, as I think, as we've done it historically at the aggressors, there's going to be a mixture of both, right? We want to bring some new blood in. We want to bring in some outside perspective. We want to bring in some of that blue expertise, which we can only get from the combat air forces, right? But at the same time, we do want to take some of the experience that we already have resident here at the aggressors in order to bring kind of both of those sides together that we need to get good at it. We have already upgraded the first aggressor F-35 pilot. He actually happens to be a reservist, so one of our more experienced guys that has been here for I think 6 or 7 years already. And again, with us kind of progressing with these initial upgrades, picking these very experienced guys to spin our cadre of F-35 pilots up, hopefully we're going to get that good mix of experience here as that squadron spins up.
A really exciting new step for the aggressors, and I know everyone's going to want to know if there's going to be any special schemes, and I know it's not, we don't know yet, but watch this space, and hopefully there will be some exciting looking F-35s, because anything that isn't a grey jet is always very popular, and it gets a big thumbs up. You must have done some amazing missions in your time, you know, huge red flags, mission employment or integration phase as it's now called, as you said, IOT&E with the F-22. Anything that particularly stands out? What kind of mission stands out for somebody like you?
If I take stock of all the missions that I flew, I think there are those missions that stand up from a quantity standpoint, and then there's those that stand up from a quality standpoint. The quantity side of the house, I mean, there's certainly extremely large missions that I led at Red Flag, where I had, I think the largest mission I've led had between 40 and 50 assets of 12 different aircraft types. And just getting all those assets to employ tactically in a challenging manner and not hit each other, that alone, putting that into execution and having that be done successfully was definitely gratifying. But
and that's you leading. You're leading that as MiG-1, are you?
100%. So as I'm the quarterback in the air that is taking these, you know, almost 50 moving parts and trying to get them to move in synchrony, integrated with our ground assets as well. So obviously we have threat surface to air missiles and our threat command and control that's controlling the mission as well. So again, trying to bring all these different elements together and bringing them to bear to one objective. So that was definitely exciting. But believe it or not, the missions that stand out even more to me, rather than those that were notable because of quantity, were the ones that maybe were smaller, but that required a ridiculous amount of blood, sweat, and tears to get spun up. The one that I was mentioning just previously, where we were executing that F-22 OT, and we spent weeks in the vault coming up with tactics. That is actually one that stands out to me. The one where we went on this massive Raptor air-to-air mission, and we employed some of these neat tactics we had come up with for the first time, and just seeing for that very first time that we employed them, how effective they were, and how many times we were managing to get guys all the way to merges with an F-22, which is very uncommon. And just coming back to the debrief and seeing those guys just with their minds blown, it's like, holy cow, how do you guys do that? That to me, I think was the pinnacle, right? How do I take a weapon system that is inferior to the F-22, but with smart employment and some tricks of the trade, how we can actually, bring the fight to the F-22 and challenge those guys. That was exciting. And the big takeaway was, by doing that, I'm making the F-22s better. I'm making them more effective in combat. And that ultimately is what being an aggressor is all about. If you can be proud of sharpening that tip of the spear and making us better as an Air Force, it doesn't get any better than that.
I guess for that IOT&E with the Raptor, I mean, nothing like that had ever been done before, had it? I mean, everyone universally takes their hat off to the F-22 being, without doubt, the best fighter on the planet. So to get the chance to go and actually find out exactly what it can do, and you're the one poking it and prodding it to see what it can do, I mean, what an amazing experience, what an incredible opportunity.
And that's the beauty of being in Nellis, right? I mean, as soon as we were done spinning the F-22 up, we were starting right back over and then getting the F-35 up to speed. So, and once we get done with the F-35, I'm sure the next latest and greatest weapon system is going to be online for us to be spinning up as well. It's a never-ending challenge. Being in Nellis is certainly it's a challenge because it's a high-pressure place to be. We are always being challenged to produce more, to keep sharpening that tip of the spear, to keep improving our level of performance so that we can continually challenge these new systems that come up. We do that, of course, not just on the air side, but when a new surface-to-air missile comes up, we need to figure out ways to simulate it. The threat countries are coming up with ways to challenge us in the space and cyber realms as well. So our space and cyber aggressors are certainly engaged in trying to spin up those capabilities as well. It's a never-ending cycle. It's hugely challenging, but it's, as I said, hugely rewarding as well. It's been awesome.
That's amazing. It's great to talk to you as always. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you got a busy day. It is a Friday, and it's good to see you got the red T-shirt on. As I know it's Friday morning for you. It's Friday evening here, and I wish we were having a barbecue and a beer together, but we sadly can't do that at the moment. And I hope we'll revisit it at the time that we can. I'm gonna finish off my beer here, and say cheers. Thank you for your time. I'm gonna chuck another log on, and I'm gonna cook some bockwurst in tribute to your surname and your heritage, your German heritage, and we'll cook that up and add that on the end. And I wish I could share it with you, but hopefully we will too in the not too distant future.
A privilege chatting with you, Jamie. Really enjoyed it, and as I said, watch this space. We will do this again in person, hopefully on the Nellis flight line. So
cheers, and I should point out that yours isn't beer; it is coffee.
Cheers.
I've got my fire going down here because it's freezing out here.
Solid. Hung out with Brits often enough to know that beer 30 is a movable concept.
I'm going to do some dogs later on because they're up there. That's the best I could do at the moment, I'm
afraid. my German ancestors are rolling in their grave right now.
The fire is on, just burnt down nicely. So as a tribute to Lt Col Stahl's German heritage, tonight we're going to do some hot dogs, which are going to be some bell peppers, some onions, and some bockwurst. There you have it, bockwurst with bell peppers and onions. Cheers.